Ozark Acres in Randolph County with Mike Hansen. Let's go. All right, Mike, it is so exciting to be out here on your farm. Can you tell us a little bit about the farm name and how you got started?
So Ozark Acres, my wife is actually from the Ozarks in Missouri, and it was also the middle name I adopted when I became an American citizen in 2013. So my name's Michael Ozark Hansen, and we decided to name it Ozark Acres.
Wow, that is really cool. So you do a lot of things out here on your farm. Could you tell us a little bit about what you are actually growing out here?
We grow animals, and our pride and joy is our Piney Woods cattle, and they're a heritage breed. They're rare and endangered. They were brought over by the Spaniards in the early 1500s, and they ran wild for about 350 years. And they've got about 40 acres that they graze here. They've got access to some pasture, and they've got access to woodlands, and they will eat kudzu, they'll eat grass, they'll eat poison ivy, they'll eat greenbrier, brambles, you name it. They've got a really good appetite for that. And they also do medicinal grazing, is what we call it anyway. They'll eat black walnut. Black walnut has jugulone in it, and it's a natural anti-parasitic. We also raise cotton patch geese, which is another endangered species. They were used traditionally for weeding cotton and corn, and actually got a lot of people through the Great Depression. Their eggs and their meat and the grease from them was used extensively on homesteads when there wasn't a lot to be had. And then we raised two different types of heritage turkeys: blue slates, which is Romeo in the background, and bourbon reds, and then a variety of various heritage chickens, including Dominiques, which a lot of people around here will know as Dominicers.
So how did you get into heritage breeds? It seems like you've got a lot of different kinds of those out here on your farm.
We do. I think the big thing was trying to find species that were adapted to North Carolina, to the weather, and to, in particular, what we have on the farm to offer them. And they, like I said before about the Piney Woods, they'll eat what we've got. And also the idea of actually helping to save an endangered species. Most people will think about pandas or rhinos when they think about endangered species, but farm animals is not something that they will consider. So being involved in the conservation of the animals is important to us.
Yeah. So you obviously have a farm, which means your animals aren't just pets. So what do you do with all of these animals that you raise?
Well, for the cotton patch, because there are less than 500 of them remaining for the time being. They're brand new to the farm. We've had them for 2.5 months, but they will be breeding geese for the foreseeable future, so we can increase the numbers of them. For the Piney Woods, we sell a lot of breeding stock to farms. We've sold from Georgia up to Virginia, a lot of farms in North Carolina, and we also sell Piney Woods heritage beef. There's, one of the things with these breeds, a lot of people will ask us, well, why do you eat them if you're trying to save them? Well, the fact is, we have to eat some of them to save them. The profits that we get, or revenue that we get from that, from the meat sales, helps us with our conservation efforts. And there's always more boys than, there's more than there's demand for. There's always more boys than there's demand for. So some of the boys end up going to the processor, and the flavor actually is fantastic for a grass-fed variety, or what we call it wild foraged actually.
Cool. So you talked a little bit about what they eat. So how do they eat throughout the year, and how might that impact their final use as a consumable product?
So We feed them organic hay and a little bit of organic alfalfa pellets in the winter when the grass isn't as good. The privet that grows as an invasive in the forest is an evergreen that will continue to grow through the winter to some respect, and they'll eat that as well. And then, of course, this time of the year, the grass is fantastic in the late spring, early summer. The fescue gets a little bit rough if we've had a real hot summer, dry summer, but then they'll go into the woods and supplement what they need.
Wonderful. So compared to conventional beef and cattle that typically graze a little bit on a mixture of hay and pellets and different things throughout the years, you spoke a little bit about grass fed. How does that impact the flavor of your beef?
So I think really in any, whatever you're feeding any animal impacts the flavor. And what we hear, a lot of people that are older, they will say that this beef actually tastes like the beef that they had when they were kids. It's got a lot more flavor to it, is what we hear. We're a bit more biased when asking us our opinion on it. Some people have said that it tastes a little bit more on the wild side, but I think in fact, if I think back to my time up in Canada and eating beef from the prairies, it tastes a lot more like that, because they were, they were in the mountains and they ate what was on the ground and in the forest there as well.
Wonderful. So how do you market your product, and about how much would you sell something like your beef cattle for?
So the breeding stock varies depending on the animal. In the last couple of years, we've kind of ranged between 1,300 and 1,800, depending on if it's a heifer or a bull. And on the marketing side, a lot of it is done online on social media. In fact, I've got a call with a guy from Mississippi this afternoon who wants to learn more about piney woods. Who's interested in buying heifers. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to disappoint him because we've sold all of our heifers for this year already. So we market on across social media, and both for our beef sales and our breeding stock. But our breeding stock usually goes before we get a chance to market it. So we focus mainly on the beef side of things. And we ship nationwide. This year we've shipped to Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, and New Orleans we shipped earlier this year, again to a lady who's looking at raising piney woods for herself. She wanted to try the meat first before she made a final decision.
Could you explain the difference between a heifer versus a bull versus a steer and some of the other different life stages you have out here?
Yep, I can. So there's either a bull calf, which is a male, or a heifer, which is a female when they're born. Steers and bulls are different because steers get their testicles cut off, and usually they do that because you only want one bull in your herd. The bulls can get aggressive with each other, and in our case, the bulls that we do keep, because we do sometimes keep them for people who want to pick them up after they're a year and a half old. They have a lot of respect for our bull Rocky. He's a big fella, and they know to stay away from him and the rest of them. So.
Could you maybe explain the difference between a polled calf versus an unpolled?
Sure. A polled cow is basically an animal that doesn't have horns, and the opposite is a horned cow. So you talk about either having polled or horned cattle. You know, when somebody says polled, they don't have any horns, just like you and me, and or they have horns, like Rocky and Rosie and the rest of them. We have one polled cow, piney woods cow. Her name is Louise, and she loves a good scratch. She'll actually follow me if she hasn't finished her scratch. Piney woods are endangered, of course, but there's a lot more horned piney woods than there are polled piney woods. So Louise is one of a smaller group of piney woods that are even more rare than the horned ones.
Wow. So when we think about eating some of these things, how long does it take to get to the desirable size, and what is the desirable size for the customer to take home?
So we've had to do a kind of trial and error thing with the calves. We used to take them in at 18 months, and although the flavor was good, we found that the fat content, and we didn't know this until afterwards, but found that the fat content was a bit on the low side. So now we go up to 30 months, so 2.5 years, as opposed to a year and a half, and we find that the flavor is a lot better, the fat content is better, and the tenderness is better as well. Because the meat is wild foraged or grass-fed, whatever you want to call it, it does have to be cooked slightly differently. So we tell our customers, if you're buying a ribeye or a sirloin to throw on the grill, heat that grill up to 500 degrees and throw it on there and cook it high and fast. And if you like it medium rare, it'll be a lot more tender than if you do it well done, but the flavor, no matter what, is outstanding for both.
Yeah. So you discussed a little bit about, of course, things we're familiar with, like ribs and steak and, these very familiar cuts of meat. Are there any other body parts you can use from these cows that also taste good?
You sure can. So we use all the organs that we can get from the processor, the liver, the kidneys, the heart, and so on. And a lot of people wonder, well, how do you cook this? And the liver in particular, because my ancestry is Danish, my parents made liver pate growing up, and my wife Sue has learned how to make it actually a butcher quality liver pate using Piney Woods liver and bacon, and then seasoning it with various seasonings, including rosemary that we grow here on the farm as well. It's outstanding. If you don't like liver, you'll still like the liver pate.
So we've talked a lot about, your beef cattle. Are there any other animals on the farm that you intend to process and sell for meat?
We process our chickens when they're finished laying, and heritage breed chickens usually are what's called a dual breed. They'll both lay eggs, and they're good for meat. A lot of the commercial breeds are either good for one or the other. So we let them finish laying, and sometimes we let them live a little bit longer than that, and then we will process them and have a good tasty chicken. They can be a little bit tough when they're older, but if you put them and slow cook them, they're phenomenal, and the taste is really good on them as well. And we use all of the bones. We use all the bones from the chickens and the cows that we have to make broth.
So with cattle, there's definitely more to it than just sticking them on a pasture and feeding them. So what else is involved with maintaining the herd?
Well, there's several things. One of the things is fly control, and you may have noticed we got guineas running around. Guineas control ticks in particular, and they have helped reduce our tick population quite a bit, which helps the cattle. It also helps the farmers because we don't all get a lot of ticks on us. The flies that breed in the patties, they compete with dung beetles, and the dung beetles live in the poop, and they actually either go down into the ground or they nest right in the poo, and they lay their eggs, and the poo feeds the eggs that way. And they're competing with the flies for that resource, because that's where the flies lay their eggs as well. So the more dung beetles that you have, theoretically, the less flies you should have. So how do we keep dung beetles? Well, we can't put insecticides on the cattle, because the insecticides, of course, you put it on their back just like you do a dog or a cat, but when they poop it out, you get some insecticide in the poop, and that kills the dung beetles. Especially if you do that on a regular basis, it can really affect your population. So we don't give them any insecticide. If the fly population does get heavy, we have some organic spray that we use. That's a mix of essential oils, including cedar oil. But as you've seen out there with the patties, as soon as one's on the ground, the dung beetles are in there and are already helping to control the fly population. And of course, because they're drilling down into the ground, they help fertilize the pasture as well.
Awesome. So with this wonderful mix of livestock, you've got a little bit of what sounds like from nose to tail use of the animal or the byproduct. So what else would you use some of their byproducts for, like the cow poop?
Well, right now we just leave it on the pasture, and of course it helps fertilize the ground. Dung beetles help that by drilling down into the soil. Some of the byproducts that we can get from some of the processors is the cowhide, and we have tried to tan a hide ourselves. It's a lot of work, and it didn't work out. We actually ended up with a hide that ended up like a drum skin as opposed to something you could use for clothing. But we do have some friends nearby down in Bear Creek that do vegetable tanning, so they don't use any chemicals, and they're actually tanning the first piney woods hide right now as we're filming this.
Wow. Do you do anything with like the poultry litter?
The poultry litter from the chicken house, we put organic straw in there, again trying to reduce and completely get rid of any chemicals that we have on the farm. And when we clean out the chicken house in the spring and the fall, that all goes onto the garden. And what we've seen is that the chicken poop obviously helps fertilize the garden, and the straw helps build the organic matter in the soil, so we get better topsoil. Wonderful. Or deeper topsoil.
Awesome. So while we were walking around, we got to meet a lot of cool creatures, including an absolutely beautiful male turkey. Could you tell us a little bit more about those?
Sure can. Again, heritage breeds, endangered. Romeo is a blue slate turkey. And when we have farm tours, the kids absolutely love him because he'll just follow the group around. Romeo is actually a really good guard turkey. He will protect the flock from hawks. We've seen hawks fly in here on the fence posts and then down on the ground to try to get at a chicken, and he'll get in there and flap his wings and scare that hawk off. So he does real well. The guineas actually, along with the tick eating, they're also really good at predator protection, because you might have known they're really loud. They're kind of like a squeaky wheel. And I've seen a female intimidate a fox back into the woods with that squeak. So they do a good job trying to protect the flock from that, from predators. And in fact, I don't think we've lost one in the last 2 years. We used to lose quite a few to hawks and a few taken by foxes as well. But between those two and now with the cotton patch geese, I think we'll have a really good defense mechanism for the chickens, which they need because they're free ranging around the property.
Wow, that's awesome. So you've mentioned a lot about heritage breeds and livestock conservancy, and how that also leads to a passion for educating others. We hear that you have done some really awesome work partnering with 4-H, not just in Randolph County, but in other counties. Could you talk a little bit more about that relationship?
I sure can. We were approached by Jackie Helton in Harnett County, I think it was about 4 years ago now, to see if we would donate some of our eggs from our heritage breed chickens to their embryology program, which is for second graders, and which is for second graders, and they take the eggs to the schools and they actually hatch them in incubators, and the kids love it. They see the little baby chicks getting born and or hatch out of the shell. So from Jackie, it actually moved into Randolph County. We started working with the extension and 4-H folks here in Randolph County, and I think now we're in our 5th or 6th year of embryology that we've been donating eggs to both Harnett County and Randolph County.
Wow. So what does local food mean to you being a part of this community?
Well, I think a big part of it is the local breeds that we have. For example, piney woods are localized to the southeastern United States. They thrive in the heat, and they do really well in North Carolina. So when you go to the store and buy an Angus steak, well, then you're buying a breed that probably works pretty well all across the United States. If you buy Piney Woods from farmers either in North Carolina or Georgia or Mississippi, then you're buying something that's a localized product that might be a little bit different, but buying those products helps support farms, and a lot of the Piney Woods farmers in particular, it helps them continue their conservation efforts of this historically important breed.
Wonderful.
Obviously, there's a lot fewer farmers that raise Piney Woods than Angus, so what we would encourage you to do is buy Angus, but in 10% of the buy Angus, but in 10% of the buy Angus, but in 10% of your purchases, find a local farmer that's raising heritage breeds that are important to your area, like Piney Woods, and purchase from them.
So what does the phrase farm to fork mean to you?
I think to me personally, it means selling directly to consumers, selling directly to restaurants, as opposed to selling to supermarkets that then sell to consumers. What that does for us is very often, if we have to sell to a grocery store, we have to lower our prices because they have to make a little bit of money as well. So if you buy directly from us, we can still keep our prices at the same as what the grocery store would buy from it, but we get more of the revenue from it.
So, Mike, you are so passionate about working with Extension and giving back to others. So could you tell us a little bit more about what you've done to help your community?
So one of our main focuses has been, since the beginning has been food assistance to help people in need with healthy food that we raise on the farm. We donate to several food pantries, including Julian Food Pantry, Ramseur Food Pantry. We've also donated to Ashboro Soup Kitchen, and we've actually made it more of a focus going forward. Of course, we still need to make money, so we've started selling T-shirts online to help raise more money so we can donate more beef and more eggs to the food pantries themselves. It's a really passionate and important part of what we do because we think healthy foods will make us all healthier, and not everybody can afford to buy organically raised grass-fed beef or organic eggs. So we feel that's an important part of our mission.
That is awesome. Mike, we have been so happy to come out here on this absolutely gorgeous day, and thank you so much for letting us have a tour of your farm.
Well, thank you for coming out. I really appreciate you, and you're always welcome back.